this, please point them at it because they could find it quite useful. So who uses this API? And I thought that what I'd do is I'd go through alphabetically, A through Z, some different organizations that are using it. So this is just 26 organizations. We can go through this pretty quickly. First, and this is almost a classic example of an organization that's using the Crossref metadata API, is Authorian. And what they are is an online collaborative editing tool for scientists. And it's been built specifically to provide lots of tools for scientists to do things that are, to make things easy for themselves, including it's got some quite sophisticated citation tools that make use of the Crossref metadata API. And what I'm going to show you here is that you can insert a citation into an article if you've got a paper or something like that. And you click on the Cite button, and it brings up a dialogue, and you type in something to the dialogue, and you get a result. Now, this is a fun little thing. If you heard about the Journal of Psychoceramics yesterday, which is a journal of the Society of Psychoceramicists, and it's the study of cracked pots. And one of the most famous authors in this fictitious journal is Josiah Carberry. And you'll find Josiah Carberry mentioned an awful lot both in Crossref and in ORCID because this is a mythical researcher, and we use the Journal of Psychoceramics and Josiah Carberry for demonstrating. But it also happens to be really good trap street. Map makers often put fake locations into maps to find out if some people are copying the maps or using the maps. Well, we've got this, and whenever we go and look in a new tool, one of the things I can do is look up Josiah Carberry, and if I get hits, I know that they're using our API. And so here we have Josiah Carberry, and it gets all the hits for Josiah Carberry, and I can insert them into the article. As I say, this is sort of like the canonical example of how different platforms use this system. Here's another one, B, all right? I think we've got 20 minutes. I should be able to get through all of these really quickly. This is EasyBib. I put it under B because it has the word bib in it. And again, if we do a search for Josiah Carberry, we get the same things, and we can insert them. This is actually a Google Docs extension. So you can actually put this into Google Docs, and then you can look up references, and it will look in the Crossref metadata API, amongst others, and insert the references directly into your document, right? And we're C. I'm kidding. I'm not going to go through the entire alphabet, right? This would be pretty tedious. But for C, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you to our blog post where Rachel Lamy and Christine McCormack-Wood have done a great sort of survey. I think it's 6 or 7 entries talking about different parties that are using the Crossref metadata API. And these are really worth reading because in each case they describe how they're using the API, what they're doing with it, and they also what they would like to see in the API. And so many of the comments in those sort of blog posts surround metadata and improving metadata quality and providing metadata. So I definitely encourage you to go and look at these, mostly also so that I don't have to go through the entire alphabet. So that's the API, right? So, and they are, lots of people are using the API, but that doesn't actually answer. I'm not trying to answer the question, who uses the API the most? What I'm trying to give you is who uses the metadata the most. And in order to do this, I'm going to kind of tell a little bit of a story. And before I tell the story, I have to apologize, right? Because I'm going to be picking on one of our members, but I think they can take it. This is Elsevier that I'm going to be showing an example of. And the title of the story is A Star is Born. So those of you of a certain age, I have now planted Barbra Streisand into your head, and you're welcome. So once I was searching through Crossref metadata search, and I looked at this, and I thought, that's very odd. What is that thing at the top? Has a very strange character in the title, and I don't know whether you can see it, but if you zoom in, you'll see this little star here. That's odd. Is that deliberate? And I followed the link, and I went to the site, and sure enough, the little star is on the site. And if you look at it, it's to point you to a footnote, right, at the bottom of the page that talks about change history of this particular article. Now, somehow, through an encoding problem, the star was actually inserted into the title element. Doesn't seem like a really big thing, except that, of course, this kind of thing does propagate. So for instance, if we go back to EasyBib, remember B? And we search for plate tectonics, Searle, and we look to the right, you'll see that we find that article, and that we find it with a nice little star in it as well. And so anybody who's using EasyBib and decides to insert this into their references is going to do that, and then they're going to have to clean it up. Or the publisher is going to have to clean it up, right? Here we've got another application. This is an application by another of our members. This is Papers. And again, we've done a search. This is the handheld version of it. We've done a search for plate tectonics, and funnily enough, you'll notice that there's a little star there. And so if you used Papers to cite this article and you stuck it into your thing, you again, either the researcher would be cleaning this up or the publisher is going to be cleaning this up. Now, this particular article, right, has been referenced 9 times. Okay? So we know at least 9 times somebody has probably cited this thing, stuck it into a manuscript, sent it off, somebody's come back, say correct these things, they've had to fix all this stuff. 9 times. That's not, is this common? Well, I just had a quick look. I wrote a little script and I said, look, go through the API and find me DOIs that have characters in the title that are outside of the standard ASCII range, right? Let's just get a sample. And I took a very small sample. I just took 150. And then what I did was I went through the titles and I looked at every character and I mapped it to a Unicode block to figure out which Unicode block it actually appears in. And in that tiny sample of 150, these are the Unicode blocks that we managed to find characters in. Now, a lot of these things are in the standard language range block, right? They're absolutely fine. And you should see that. I was still surprised at the variation. But you do start seeing some very, very strange things down here, like supplementary private use, miscellaneous symbols, specials. And so you can see that there's an awful lot of, and I'm going to do some more research on this to look it out, but you can just see examples of this very odd stuff coming into citations. This, for example, is a variation on the one that we just saw. We've got this, this little dingbat down here. The other thing to note here is that for some reason they decided to, not title case the title. Chances are they got this direct from the people who are doing typesetting, and so it was in all caps in the way it was displayed, and so they stuck it all caps in the metadata. And then what this means is that somebody inserting this is going to go after and have to fix this. They're going to have to actually fix it manually. Here's another example, right? So what's going on here? Well, there are an awful lot of enter characters that have been stuck into the title. So it's actually, the title is spread across a number of lines. And so again, anybody who is citing this thing would have to go in and fix that. And here's, one other example. Again, this is sort of the capital letters thing. But the other, so the other thing to notice here, right? Nope, is the dagger. And then finally this one, this happens a lot with books, right? Is that somebody says, geez, Crossref doesn't have a place to put the price, right? So we're just going to stick it in the title, right? And it's truly, you can actually, there are so many books where somebody has decided that they're just going to put the price in the title. So again, somebody citing this, it's going to look weird. I don't think APA or Harvard or Vancouver has a format for displaying the price of something when you cite something, right? So again, what does this mean really in sort of practical terms? Of this sample of 150 items, they were referenced over 1,600 times, okay? 1,600 times people probably had to go in and fix these things, okay? Now, does this matter? Are we just being pedantic metadata obsessives? Yes, it's true, we are. But it's also costing money. Let's look at this. We have a number of publishers submitting metadata into Crossref. And Crossref, in turn, provides its API, and we have a number of third-party consuming this metadata and making it available to a lot of researchers who produce a lot of papers. And these papers, in turn, get submitted to a publisher. What's happening here? The publisher's effectively, at the mercy of the person up there who has the worst metadata, right? And sometimes the really depressing thing is sometimes it's the publisher themselves. They're just fixing the same mistake over and over again in the references, and then it just propagates, and then it just gets obliterated because they haven't fixed the problem at the source further upstream. So again, what we're trying to do here is just sort of illustrate that there's this important cycle that's going on where, publishers are submitting metadata to Crossref. Crossref is distributing it to third parties. Those third parties, it's often used in a lot of cases by researchers, and then that goes back into the publishers. So of course, this is where the great, clickbait reveal is. Who uses Crossref metadata the most? You do. Whether you know it or not, you are using Crossref metadata the most. It's going into your references. And if people don't start taking it seriously and cleaning stuff up, you're just going to propagate this cost. So yesterday, there's this guy up here, I think his name is John Chodaki, and he talked about the Metadata 2020 initiative and how they're trying to put together real-world ROI examples of why it is that you might want to care about metadata. Now this morning, I gave a big presentation about why you might care about metadata sort of at the very high level, right? Because it's about trust, because it's about all of these things that we're supposed to be experts in and that we're supposed to be bringing assurance to. But if that kind of stuff seems too highfalutin for you, think about the money. Think about the money that's just being wasted in the system. This is just one example of where this is happening. You, our members, are the biggest consumers of Crossref metadata.